that should be what it opens up to. Is that picture is right there?
Nice.
Is it working? Oh, there it goes. Okay, we finally got it.
I'm ready for
live.
it.
I'm just gonna say Scrat is a druggie, and those nuts are his
Nice.
fix.
No,
I would be down for that.
I've discovered even
Scrat is a
more
metaphor.
blasphemy. Oh boy. Okay, so.
For what?
Boy.
Well, I mean, I have found evidence of the offspring.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
If you're just joining us for this live stream, and odds are
He's
you
kinda
haven't
cute.
seen any more of it because we've only started 32 seconds ago. Welcome to the Camille's Harem live stream. Today we're going to be talking about why they decided to make a sexy squirrel lady in the Ice Age.
and why Scrat is a metaphor for the perils of drugs.
Yes. Because why is this? Why? Just
Why?
that's the only question. This just makes me feel very uncomfortable on a lot of
Yes,
levels.
same. Let's just switch the feed over to the Stardew Valley and just go with that.
I mean, I kind of want to let them suffer a little bit longer, so you know, there's
Yeah,
that.
to suffer.
The baby's like
to
so
suffer
ugly
this
that he's
thing.
kind of cute though.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
no,
we
that-
need to move
that
on
is the
before we
thing.
give Idle an aneurysm, okay?
He's
I just
just a baby. He can't help that he has ugly parents.
yes.
Yeah.
He's just making the best of life. It's not his fault.
Yeah. Maybe that's what the movie's gonna be about.
Oh, jeez. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
back to our regularly scheduled live stream. So here we have Stardew Valley, a much less
Oh yes.
emotionally scarring game
Oh my god.
Yeah.
for small children.
Curse blasphemy. Yes.
Oh man,
Good
it's so
evening,
bad.
Kevin. Good evening, Title. Thank you for joining us as we get out of the suffering. Okay. Take us from one point of suffering to the other.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
While I go get a cup of water,
we're going to be keeping this
explain us
this
the,
live stream a little bit short.
A
Yes.
cuppa.
Yes,
Okay,
explain,
so
explain
when
to
we're-
the viewers what we are doing today.
So today we are going to talk about oh so dreaded fanfiction. The thing is that fanfiction of itself isn't bad, but there's a trend that's been coming out more and more recently, and it's now become industry approved. Sky and I were talking about this a little bit before the live stream, but I've begun to find in our YouTube comments people basically being like, well, you see, my fanfiction is better than the canon. No one has said it exactly in those words, but like it's come out that way where people are just all like, yeah, well, what I've come up with is better than whatever someone else has put up in like the show or in this book or in this video game. And fan fiction, once again, it's fine of itself, but like it's becoming very apparent that there's some weird fight playing out between fan fiction and canon stories.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I feel like we should have like just a brief discussion about this.
Yeah,
Since it's been so much in our comments, might as well address it.
sure.
You
No.
take that back, Title. Toby's a Fox's talentless hack. Yeah, right. My foot.
I
Who?
think one of the problems is you can't, well, and I said that in our like text chat, but one, assuming that your fanfic is better than canon sounds extremely cocky, and two, you're basically saying your work is better than something that was like actually went through a proper editing process.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for something that's been made into like an anime or into like an actual show, went from like the actual book to a live action or like animated show. And so if you're like taking all your information from that show, that's been edited multiple times to get to that point, and so like trying to
You're
match
not
up with the
starting from scratch.
complexity and everything. Yeah, exactly. And so there's just so much that like you're able to like pull from and do that. You're not making any of that. You can't really say, "Oh, this is better," when you're really just borrowing like straight from the source.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Honestly, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of have mixed feelings about this sort of thing. Because on one hand, that's a really, really good point. But then on the other hand, it's like I've read fan fiction that is more satisfying than an entire season or the end of a show or a movie
Yeah.
or etc.
Yes.
It's except like honestly, the whole like purpose behind me, and again, like disclaimer, this is a group of people where we ourselves have written fan fiction.
Yeah.
My motivation for writing my Voltron fan fiction was because I did not like the last 2 seasons, and so I was like, I want to do something else.
Yes.
If you
You
want
know,
something
so
done right, do it yourself.
yeah, so it's like
Yeah.
And they
I
did
can
not do that
totally
right.
they did not. They completely butchered the last season, but I can see both sides because it's like I didn't create that story from scratch. Although to be fair, neither did the writers of the Netflix show because it was based off of a previous. It's just another rendition
Mhm.
of Voltron. So I don't know. It's tricky. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's a black and white thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it really isn't. I like the kind of community that is made when like you get a lot of people making fan fictions for one specific thing. Don't necessarily like the actual like people and like comments that they make on different stuff, but like you read a bunch of fanfics for a specific topic or like from a based off of a specific like show or book or whatnot, and like you can see a lot of similarities that people like, and like they'll see in one fanfic they'll throw into another, and I really like that kind of stuff. But like I think one of the problems Lars is having is when people read all these fanfics and then they try to force what they think like is better from these fanfics onto actual canon, try to influence the original author into
Right.
doing these different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to piggyback off what you just said right there, Scott, like one example that I immediately go to is from Gravity Falls. I love the fan fictions that the fans came up with after the episode Not What He Seems, where they're like, ooh, what was the past between Stan and Ford? And the fans came up with what I believe is the superior backstory. Where they had like the monster, where they had like the original mystery twins with Stan and Ford going on adventures with Fiddle Ford. There was great stuff. There's great artwork, great fan fiction. It is awesome. It's way more adventurous, way more engaging, and I think even way more emotional than the canon story that we get in The Tale of Two Stans. But for the canon of the show, what the show needed to do, I can absolutely respect what Alex Hirsch and his group did with The Tale of Two Stans, because it leads into a very satisfying, really awesome, weird Mageddon, and it all makes sense.
Right.
But the fans did a better variation.
Yeah,
So it's like it's a matter of like I can appreciate good fan fiction. I love good fan fiction, but you still got to respect the canon so long as the canon's done right. And sometimes,
Right.
yeah, the fans have a point in places like Voltron, or I would say even the ending of Steven Universe or the ending of Adventure Time that were so lackluster.
Right.
And
I really like
needed
something
opinion.
new.
Yeah,
Right.
I really like the fix that tried to add to canon, not like take away stuff, but like we're like, oh, we're gonna go back in time and like show you stuff that's
Completely
like getting set up.
retcon.
Yeah, well, not even retcon. It's just like, hey, I want to know the story of these characters before
Oh,
like
I see.
the
Yeah.
source of canon. Like I've heard of a really good one that I still need to find called All the Young Dudes, which basically like goes through all 7 years of like James, Lily, Sirius, and Remus when they're going to Hogwarts originally.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've heard wonders about that fanfic. I still need to find it, but like I've heard wonders about that fanfic, and I really like the idea of it.
Yeah.
where like you're not outright changing canon, you're just, oh, here's another story that goes along with canon. Those are pretty fun in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Baba. Yeah, it's just kind of tricky when you run into, at least what I find is like, with certain fandoms, you run into that idea of like fanfic and like head canons get
Yeah.
to the point where they trump anything, to the point where like people believe that it's canon and completely disregard what is actually canon. That
Right.
to me, I'm like, that feels weird. I feel like that is like, you can appreciate both things or you can not appreciate canon, but that doesn't mean that it's not how the story went.
Right.
You know?
I think
And that's when a fandom turns toxic. Well,
Right.
one of the reasons.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that problems happens when you get a lot of people who assume because they're writing fanfics and like they're part of that fanfiction community that they suddenly now own a part of that like story.
Or of
Mhm.
the fandom.
Which of the
Yeah.
fandom. And you need to realize with a fanfic, you're never actually going to own the rights to any of this. It's all belonging to the original author. And you have to understand that going into fanfic. If you don't, you're going to cause problems.
Sure. Ooh, a diamond.
Yeah, and I'll say this, like in terms of like relations between like fans and a story, I think it's absolutely amazing and beautiful when fans really take to a story and like they interact with it, they get creative. Like as a fan of the Cosmere and of Brandon Sanderson, and being a part of that community, it is fantastic. I absolutely love it. There are people who take it way too far or get like, or like I used to follow certain like mega fans until it got to the point where basically all they did on their podcast was talking about how they wanted to do the Stormlight Archive, and I'm like, yeah, no, then that's not that's not okay, because you gotta respect what the creators do. I mean, you can gripe about things that you think aren't good, and that's fine. That's what you do. That's what we do as fans. But when you start saying like what I would do is better, and I think it would enhance the story, if you're going to say that, put your money where your mouth is, and show it. And sometimes people do that through fan fiction. I think sometimes what's better yet is when people go and they create their own story, like that draws inspiration, but then like does something different. Like I was telling Scott earlier, um, Armina in The Legend of the Ten Lords is basically like a fan fiction version of San from Princess Mononoke. I love the movie. I love San, but I hate the ambiguous ending.
Yeah,
Like
it really is.
I absolutely understand why Miyazaki did it, and I can appreciate it. I'm just like, San is like left, like, as a character. San is like left in the wind. Where's she gonna go? What is she gonna do? And so I'm like, what if I wrote a San-like character and then like took her in a direction where she actually has an ending? So that's what I've been doing with Narmina. If you know what to look for, you can definitely see the parallels between my story and Princess Mononoke, but it's very different things.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I feel this then begs the question of like, then where is the line? Where is the line between like fanfic and stepping too far into being like, this is my story now? Like that's what it feels like sometimes. Is that like fans get so wrapped up in a story and feeling entitled. I would say like that entitlement is a big thing, to where they feel like they are owed something or that they know better or whatever. Like, where's that line? Because I do think there is merit to fan fiction.
Yeah. Well, and you get a lot of people who write a fanfic and then they kind of reskin it. And so, like, they take all the characters, they rename them, they give them a little bit different backstory, they change the world around a little bit, and then they, like, end up taking credit for that as their own story, and so you end up with a Twilight fanfic that becomes 50 Shades of Grey. And that does happen.
Yeah. or something like Story Thieves. Story Thieves is a great parody and fan fiction of Harry Potter. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. I think because like this is what, and I think something important to note right here is that we're not going to come to a 100% great consensus that's going to satisfy everyone.
Yeah.
Um, and I think and what I'm going to say is this is that I myself as an author and as a fan grown a lot since our first recorded discussions of fan fiction, like back when we were at Flagstaff. Because I was adamantly like, I don't like fan fiction, and I know I'm writing fan fiction, and I hate myself for it. and like and like I've grown to say, fan fiction absolutely has a place. It goes to show just how much fans care about a story, how much they care about characters or themes. And I think it's great to have good positive conversations about this stuff. I mean, we've walked ourselves back from making fun of fan fiction. We used to do all those bad fanfic readings, and we've walked ourselves back from that. And I think that is
we've grown.
We've grown because we've come to accept it. We've just devolved in other ways. But like it goes to show that we have come to understand things better about writing, about that for other people, like for them the joy in writing is to write fan fiction. And
that's awesome.
And what we have to do is we have to figure out, I think, for each fan base and for each person, where is the healthy medium where the fan interaction comes to the canon of the story and its original creators, and say like this is the happy medium place. And that changes depending on the fan base, and it comes down then to the fans, and I think also to the creator to then try to maintain a good healthy medium. Anne McAfree's Dragon Riders of Pern series is what I consider to be something that, like, as a creator shouldn't do, where she demanded there be no fan art made of her story, and she has it in her will as a part of her estate. Money is taken from the profit of her books to hire people to hunt down fan fiction people and shut them down.
There's a fair number of writers who do that.
That is not okay. That turned me off to the Dragon Riders of Pern. Actually, when I learned that was the case, I had a very hard time continuing on with the series because I'm like, that is so disrespectful.
Yeah.
And then there's of course like J.K. Rowling, where it's like, madam, I think you need to stop talking. I love your stories.
Shut up.
I love your stories, but like,
Step away
if you want to say more, step away from Twitter and write another book. And then there's Neil Gaiman. He's like, see right here, Neil Gaiman, from Scott, there in the chat. Neil Gaiman is someone who I think honestly tries to interact with his fans in a healthy way, but he also lets them do their own thing.
Yeah.
So figuring out, and then there's Brandon Sanderson, who is always inviting fans in. I actually personally think he invites the fans in maybe too much. Because there's so many Brandon Sanderson fans who just demand stuff from him, and I'm like,
they're
guys,
not entitled to
let
it.
the man breathe.
Yeah.
Endo, maybe you need to like, yes, maybe you should hold back on the lobs. Yeah. So and that's the thing is that like, all of these are different situations, and so I think that's why this will always be a continuing conversation.
Yeah. Well, see, you bring up a good point going back to like the Dragon Riders of Pern is like I feel like most of fan fiction, the motivation behind it is that these are fans of a series who just love those stories and they love those characters. And so it's like they want to be a part of that world, or to add on to that world. Like it doesn't usually come from a place of malice. And even if there is frustration there and they're writing what they wish they had seen or read, that's valid too. And
Yeah.
so I feel like it's like this tricky relationship of, yeah, sorry, but an author isn't required to give you anything. You know, like you're as a reader or a consumer of this medium, you are not entitled to anything. But I feel like as someone who writes, like there's got to be that give and take, you know, where it's like people, if they love my story, then they have that right to make fan art, to make fan fiction, even if I may not like certain aspects of it. I just feel like that comes with the territory.
Even if it's very,
Agree.
very.
Even if it's like, yeah, I'm looking at you, Lars.
Mister.
Yes.
Be afraid of getting too close to Lars, because he will put you in a terrible fanfic.
Yeah, he will write your stories.
Yes. I do remember terrible fanfics, and also to that point, I remember when we had a conversation. This was again back in Flagstaff when I was introducing you guys to the Cheap Wheatser, to Bob. And I was just like, imagine a guy who can invade your stories and mess around in them and like steal stuff from them and like do weird things. And like and you guys, and both of you were like, "Oh, that's so uncomfortable. I don't like that." I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of the point."
Yeah.
Like Bob is almost an embodiment of fan fiction unto himself.
Yes.
Makes me uncomfortable.
You know what? One of these days, I'm looking forward to meeting someone who I've never met in my life who's read my books and it's just been like, who asks like, "Why did you write Bob?" He's just like, I don't know what to make of him. And I'm like, that. Me too. I'm still coming to terms with Bob.
You didn't create Bob. Bob just found you.
Oh, Bob did find me, and Bob is one of the oldest characters I have ever come up with. Bob has been like a constant companion since I was a kid.
Yeah, you're
maybe that's why I'm so messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
Let's see here. There's one thing I think I want to bring up here. That Title wrote down before we call it a night, because a lot of us have got to get going here in just a moment. But when fandoms take over the canon of the story, and I think that what Title's trying to get at right here, for instance, is like when you have, since the game Undertale, and I'm also beginning to see this actually with other stories as well now, when fans get hung up on certain aspects of a story, or especially on certain characters.
Yeah.
And they try to run with them in their own direction. Say with Undertale, Sans and Chara are probably the characters that fans just like took and ran with, creating their own versions to the point that like it became a new form of canon that isn't actually canon. And I think that like as a fan of Lord of the Rings, I'm beginning to see that with Gandalf.
Interesting.
There is a real push amongst certain fans, especially the people who are big proponents of Amazon's Rings of Power, and look, that's its own thing. But they really want Gandalf to be a certain kind of character, a certain kind of wizard and hero, and there's so much about Gandalf that we don't know, that it is possible to run with that character, but it's just weird, like, because it's in its infant stages. Who knows if this will actually catch on or anything like that? But it's really weird seeing how people, especially, want Gandalf to be in the Rings of Power and be this character in the Second Age that he canonically isn't. But because it's the Second Age, Tolkien wrote so little about it.
It's kind of open.
You can, in theory, add what you want. So, yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Interesting. I have not really seen anything about that.
Yeah,
And
it's
what kind of Gandalf
Oh.
are they wanting? Oh, 1,000.
they.
Good.
I really don't know, and that's the weird thing. 'Cause people are like, I'm so excited for Gandalf to come in here, and I'm like that's not Gandalf, and like affected like I guess what they want, at least from what I have seen, is that they want to have a Gandalf that is kind of like savior of the hobbits, like
Interesting.
who's always been there watching out for the hobbits. Like that's his primary reason is that he loves the hobbits. His love for the halflings leaf has clearly slowed his mind. I don't know. It's weird. We'll see where this goes. The show definitely wants to do something like that with Galadriel. I mean, I've already released my videos about that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything else really until the show comes out, and I can then say more because at this point, what's the point? I'm arguing against fanfic writers.
Yeah. Fanfic is gonna fanfic, my guy.
Fanfic, and I'll just have to accept that. I'll have to accept that when the show comes out, and I'll just unleash my vitriol on whether. And, I mean, and the show could be great.
Yeah.
The show could be a very well written show that's like, hey, this is well written fanfic. I like well written fanfic, so it might be good. A lot doesn't seem like it's that good, but yeah. Anyway, before I ramble about that, Tevin also brings up a great point right here. There's not much information on Chara and Sans, but so people find a way to create interesting stories about them. And yeah, that definitely is what happens with characters in any story who are really interesting, that people take a liking to, but there's not much written about them. I think that's definitely where fan fiction again can actually do something really great, giving more life to a character that we know so little about.
Right.
Even if it doesn't line up with canon.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Oh, any other thoughts on this? I mean, we could ramble for hours, but we should wrap up.
I think I'm
Fanfiction
good.
is a tricky one.
It's its own can of worms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Get out of here.
And yeah, it's a can of worms that we kind of have to come back to every now and then, just because it's something that especially we as novice writers, a lot of us do it. We've written our own fan fictions, and again, it's totally fine. We shouldn't disparage it, and we can learn from it, and there's great stuff. So like that's why it's always, I think, going to be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah,
For sure.
You know, there's also
This is the ongoing
instances-
conversation.
Yeah, there's instances in which like fan fiction or like a lot of like genuine work is inspired or like is
A lot of
inspired in
original
a way
work?
by fan fiction. Yeah, a lot of original work can start as fan fiction and move on from there, you know. And so it's like,
Yeah.
fan fiction is not bad by any stretch of the means. It just can sometimes come across as varying in quality. We'll say that.
Well, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people take, 50 Shades of Grey as like, yeah, well, that's kind of like your worst case scenario of a bad fanfic.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
there
like
are
not everything
genuinely
is like
people
that.
who enjoy that film, you know, or
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Whatever.
A lot of the teachers I work with love 50 Shades of Grey. So I'm like, okay, you guys do you.
Yeah.
I think what I like to point to as a great
If you're
example
boring,
of
just
fan
tell me.
fiction that is a great example of, I think, fan fiction that created original stories is Fablehaven and Beyonders from Brandon Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Because what originally started out as Fablehaven, and you can totally also see with Beyonders, was that he was writing fan fictions of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And so he he was originally going with that, and then he's like, you know what if I just made my own thing? And so he just started adding his own ideas. He obviously changed up the characters, and I love Fablehaven. It is one of the best children series I've ever read.
I want to reread it. It's been so long.
reread it as well. I'm right now reading Dragonwatch. I want to do a review of Dragonwatch when I'm through with it, but I almost feel like I need to reread all of Fablehaven and all of Dragonwatch
Yeah.
just to solidify some of my opinions. Because there's some characters I'm like, dude, Brandon, why did you write these? These characters were not needed. That's mostly in Dragonwatch. But then at the same time, there's moments in Dragonwatch where I'm just like, this is so amazing! Yes!
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to reread that one. How many books are a Dragonwatch? Is that one worth it?
I think it's up to 5 now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's 5. But it ends with the 5th book. I'm right now in the middle of the 4th book, which I'm going to say this. One of my few gripes with Fablehaven was that I thought Seth didn't get enough screen time to mature as a character.
Yeah.
And he did it in Dragonwatch.
Okay.
And I love that Brandon Mole did that with Seth, because Seth's character matures just amazingly well.
Yeah,
That's
Seth's
good.
character is a
I love
mess
it.
in the Fablehaven, like the first series.
Yeah, I remember in the first book.
Oh, I hated him in the first book.
Oh, I hated him.
It wasn't
he
until
was
like the
so
third book
hurt.
I even tried to like him.
Yeah. Like by the end I was like, okay, he's grown a lot. I appreciate this kid. But I remember my mom and I, like, she read it right before I did. And so when I was reading it, I just remember we just hated Seth so much. He was just the worst. Poor guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know, from what you've said
like,
about other characters in Dragonwatch, I'm a little hesitant, to be honest.
Yes, their cousin, his name is Knox, something like that. I can't stand him. He's worse. He's worse than first book Seth. And I feel like Brandon Mole, and I feel like Brandon Mole is like, you know what, if I could make a character that you didn't like become a great character later on, and that he's like, I can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
it's
he
just not
didn't.
it's just not working for me. And I think one of the problems is that with the new characters that he's tried to introduce in Dragonwatch, there's not enough time to fully develop them and do everything else that he's trying to do, because Dragonwatch is just, it's insane, because now that Fablehaven tells its own amazing story from beginning to end, but all of the groundwork is laid, so he doesn't have to spend 2-3 books introducing you to the magical worlds of Fablehaven. He can throw you right into the mix. And so, like, you're introduced right off the bat to, like, incredible dragons, demons, elven folk, insanely amazing stories. Like, I just got to one point that was like, it's like something that I didn't realize that he had already been building up in Fablehaven, the reveal of a certain character, and I'm just all like, oh, this is so cool. And like, Brett, I'm like, dude, like, you had this idea, and you must have had this idea in your head for so long, because there's no way that you just came up with this out of the blue. You've been laying the foundations for this since the 3rd book.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
And like, we're already, and like, I've just been introduced to this character, and I'm just all like, this is awesome. Like, you did a great job of building up slowly to this great character who Seth gets to meet, and it would never have happened if it wasn't for the fact that Seth was an idiot in the earlier books and did things that he shouldn't have done. But because he did those things, it ends up having long-reaching consequences that could be good or could be bad, I don't know yet, that reveal some of these other characters. And I'm like, that is well done. And again, that's born out of what was once a fan fiction. So you can get great stuff that comes out of what was once fan fiction. Fablehaven is definitely an example of that, and I'm hoping that Dragonwatch ends well. Like, the 4th book really gripped me. The let's see here. The first book has a lot of great stuff, except for the new characters. The 2nd book, an amazing twist to it. And the 3rd book, I'm still on the fence about how I feel about it. The 4th book has just been delivering. It's been firing on all cylinders. So, I've been happy about that one.
Well, I'll add it to my tentative list to get to eventually.
It's a long list.
It's a very long list.
You know, my list continues to grow. Yeah. So let's end it here since Scott's got to go. And one last thing, I just want to pay attention to what John wrote as we sign off, because I think what he said right here is really good. Fanfiction is a tough nut to crack. Absolutely, it can be great when it's genuinely trying to rewrite something or paying some kind of tribute. It can be very interesting and well done. Amen. But when it's just trying to fetishize it, things can get tough to swallow. Or it completely parodies the story, and it can feel a little condescending.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
John, amen.
Amen.
Thank you for giving us the final words.
That was wunderbar.
And on that note,
Yes.
since you just that was the perfect ending, let's just wrap it up then.
Yeah.
Said in a few sentences what we couldn't.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, one of my cats just broke into the room saying it's time to get off. Charlie.
Ooh.
See if I can grab a video of him because he's acting cute right now. It's a rare moment. Ah! Come back here, Mumba.
Bless whoever
sneeze.
Ouchie. That's how you know it's a goal.
Ouch.
No, it was bad when it hurt. Ouchie, mama.
All right. Well, I say we sign on off. It's been great talking to you all about fanfiction.
And then that'll do it.
Oh, I guess that's me who has to turn off the live stream, isn't it? Okay, hold on.
Yes. Bye, Mom.